entire contractual obligation in 24 hours. UMG woke up and their biggest artist was already gone. Now he's a free agent, and reportedly a private equity firm has already put a $2 billion offer on the table. If he takes it, he bypasses the label system entirely and becomes the wealthiest artist in the history of music, more than Jay-Z, more than Taylor Swift. That's not rap beef, that's a hostile takeover. The labels have been doing artists dirty for decades, and Drake just flipped the board on all of them.
Now, I'm just going to throw this out there, but I told you guys in Drake's lawsuit against UMG, it's mentioned that his contract with UMG is up in 2025. It's also mentioned that he owns all of the copyrights to his music under Frozen Moments LLC. If he's able to be an independent artist, they don't want him to have a huge financial backer like Stake that's paying him $100 million a year. And then on top of that, he's collecting all of these royalties from his music. He's collecting all of this money. They don't want that. That's dangerous for them, because then if outside third parties are able to keep an artist afloat like this, if Drake can get $100 million a year from Stake, and these outside third parties can then essentially not necessarily be the label, but step in and be the financial backer for an artist, then that completely gets rid of the need for a UMG. So that means that UMG now has a motive in needing to shut down Stake. So it's being reported that a private equity company has offered Drake $2 billion to financially back him as an independent artist. Now, I posted this video months ago, back when it was announced that Stake was being sued by two random people, as well as Drake and Aiden Ross. In the lawsuit, the two random people alleged that Drake and Aiden Ross were using bot farms in Turkey in order to bot their music. Now, I said back then that I felt like this was a ploy put together by UMG, that these people were likely being funded by someone else to file this lawsuit, and that there was no real evidence to this. It just seemed weird that two random people who work 9-to-5 jobs and...
Now, the ultimate question is this: is he out his contract? And if he's out his contract, to me, he did a marvelous job of pivoting from one thing to the next. Now, what happens when you pivot out your contract? They say history repeats itself, or it damn near rhymes, right? Look what happened to Michael Jackson, that is. As soon as he got out his contract or bought Sony, half of Sony, things start to change, right? Because at that point, you beat the game. I think with this pivot, he may have beaten the game. And it's kind of funny as far as symbolism, how he's using Michael Jackson glove as far as the Iceman, as far as what the Iceman is representing. From a business perspective, to me, he did the right thing. He owns all of his lyrics under an entity called Frozen. So the question would be, is he out his contract? Let's find out.
One of them actually filed bankruptcy recently. It just didn't make sense that they would have that type of information in order to make a claim of a bot farm in Turkey. So back when I made this video, I was basically saying that UMG was nervous that Drake would go independent. And the reason for that is because if Drake can find a way to do what's never been done before and let private equity companies be his financial backing so that he can remain an independent artist, license his music to them, that completely takes the need for a record label completely off the table. And let's be honest, if Drake can pull it off, the biggest artist in the world, if he can pull it off, then what do you think Taylor Swift's going to do in a couple years? What do you think Bad Bunny's going to do in a couple years? The Weeknd, Justin Bieber, Chris Brown, maybe even Rihanna.
I 1000% agree. For some reason, it seemed like those guys from Canada, as far as from the music industry, the Tory Lanez and the Drake, as far as business savvy, you got to give them a round of applause.
And that's just the big artists that are already out. What about up and coming artists who already can market themselves, because streamers are becoming the media these days? They can market themselves. Social media is out here, so they don't really need UMG for the marketing. All they really need a record label for is the funds. But you completely take the need for a record label off the table.
I don't even think you need the record labels anymore. they're obsolete. It's like when they created CDs or tapes, and now you have streaming. You don't need them anymore. Funds, you can go to the bank for that. Marketing, you can hire another marketing agent just as much as they hire a marketing agent. It's over with.
if you find some other way to replace those funds. And then on top of that, you're also keeping the rights to your music. Let me also say that nobody knows the contract between Drake and UMG, but we do have some context clues, which I've walked down with you guys before months ago as to what that contract might be. For example, in Drake's lawsuit, he says that his contract is up with UMG in 2025. Well, we know that he just released these albums under UMG in 2026. So a lot of contracts are written to where you have stipulations that you have to fulfill. And once you fulfill those stipulations, the time is what ends the contract at that point. So whatever date ends the contract will end the contract. If that date comes and you have not fulfilled the stipulations, then the contract does not end until you fulfill those stipulations. So I think that's what happened here with Drake. He didn't release enough albums, and it's also rumored, we don't know if it's true or not, that UMG did not count Her Loss and Some Sexy Songs for You as albums that are under his contract and under the stipulations. So for that, he had to release 2 additional albums. So therefore, he gives us Iceman, Maid of Honor, and Habibti, thus fulfilling his contract. Now,
All in one day, one release. Ingenious.
a lot of traditional contracts will state that you can't release new music for a while after dropping under the label if you decide to go independent. But we know that Drake does not have a traditional contract with UMG. So his contract might very well say that within a couple months, 6 months, a year, he can release new music. And like I said in the previous video, Drake has stated in his lawsuit that all of his music, the copyrights, are owned by Frozen Moments LLC. Frozen Moments LLC is solely owned by Drake. So that means he owns all his music. He owns the copyrights to all his music. He's not going to put that in the lawsuit if it's not true. So I say all that to say that I think some of the things that we've been seeing over the last couple years are a direct response and reflection of Drake attempting to leave the record label. He gets into an infamous rap battle with Kendrick Lamar. Right before Kendrick Lamar responds, after starting it, right before he responds, he signs a new distribution deal with UMG. This also happens to be 1 year before Drake is scheduled to renegotiate his contract with UMG. A bunch of Drake's friends and colleagues that he has worked with turn on him out of nowhere, and none of them can say what their issue with Drake is. The narrative is pick a side, the elimination of Drake. He's going to be done with. That's the narrative surrounding all of this. And then almost a year later at the Grammys, we see Lucian Grange and Dr. Dre high-fiving one another right after Kendrick Lamar wins an award. I mean, they're high-fiving as though they've accomplished a task. On the biggest stage in America, Kendrick Lamar calls Drake a PDF. Drake sues UMG and alleges they did all this to halt his contract renegotiations. And then all these lawsuits start coming up out of nowhere, filed by random people, one of which was recently dismissed. One lawsuit that alleged Drake was using bot farms was recently dismissed for a lack of evidence. It just seems as though all of this was an attempt to prevent Drake from leaving UMG, and it backfired. Because if this is true,
It was a targeted lawsuit. Targeted for sure.
and he is going to leave, and he's going to get way more money than UMG, the record label, could ever have offered him. Way more money than any record label could ever offer him. With that being said, Drake, if you're watching this, I have some really, really, really great ideas.
He basically became the record label. Let's see what I have to say about it.
Not gonna say they don't have the sources, but from my experience, unless Drake could change whatever at any moment, so we don't know if those information is accurate or how old it is. However, we should think about, let's say this is true, the alleged Man of Honor, a second album dropping an hour later. Well, Universal, what they've done ever since the entire thing, fiasco with Frank Ocean, is that they usually contractually have put something in place where if you drop an album, you have to wait. for you to drop another album. And that waiting period usually is between 6 months and a year. So technically, even if Drake fulfills his contract with Universal, that would mean by dropping Iceman, and technically he would be a free agent unless he resigns. He can't just drop another album until the allowed time on that label, right? These are set in stone. Like, YoungBoy went from Atlantic to Capitol. He had a moratorium period. And by the way, this is why after he got out that contract, he still did these one-offs with Atlantic, because Atlantic basically had barred him from putting out music, but they would go back on them doing that when he would want to drop something, and they did one-off deals. You get what I'm saying? Whatever. So now what we're watching right here is a Drizzy Drake heist.
Oh!
Now, that's one way to look at it. Maybe they did what Prince did. But I think he found the loophole. That's just my thoughts. I think he found the loophole.
This is what Drake wanted to tell me the whole time. We're watching a heist. You Iceman. Now we have Maid of Honor. We're watching a heist. What we're watching right here is a Drizzy Drake heist.
Oh!
This is what Drake wanted to tell me the whole time.
Scared of him having his independence now. What would happen if this golden child was independent? And what would that mean for the future of music? What would it mean for the labels? And it seemed like he's realized some things and putting those things into motion, right? Like, I got scared when I saw the Michael Jackson glove. Album covers mean things, words mean things. You could will some things to you. And we have so much evidence.
It's called symbolism. And also, before Mike went out, I believe he was going on a world tour, and he had over 1.2. This is the part they don't talk about. He had over $1.2 billion policy for going through a world tour. Then, for some miraculous reason, he died right after. Someone collected. We're not going to say who, but we know that a body, a conglomerate, collected on his behalf. Let's continue.
Of anybody that's ever been in a similar position to Drake, that were fighting for their rights and fighting for their independence, and what we normally see happen. The sympathy I spoke about earlier, it was that. It took me out of hip hop, battle music, and just fan mode into humanity. Well, hold up now. I might shed a tear if something happened to him. And he'll shed a tear too, but yeah, scared of him having his independence now.